Welcome to Betrayal Stories. In today's story, I find myself speaking words I never imagined I would say aloud, not because the tale is scandalous or shocking, not because it explodes with dramatic gestures or loud confrontations, but because it is quiet, subtle, the kind of story that lives in the spaces between grief and silence, the corners where hearts wander without permission and where emotions exist in private, invisible forms that no one can name or touch without breaking them. A story so delicate that speaking it feels almost sacrilegious, like opening a fragile glass ornament that might shatter the moment it's released into the world. And yet, here I am, compelled to share it because some truths, no matter how tender or complicated, demand recognition, demand to exist outside the walls of memory. And so I begin with the aftermath of the funeral. After the last car-carrying friends and distant relatives vanished down the street and the echoes of condolences and whispered sympathies dissolved into the air, leaving the house in a state that was neither empty nor peaceful, because emptiness would have been simple, a blank canvas, something bearable. But this house was not empty. It was filled with lingering presences, habits, sounds, traces of a life that had been lived in its walls for years. My husband's absence palpable in every small detail, from the slightly open cabinet door he always left ajar, to the rhythm of his footsteps in the hallway, to the habitual clearing of his throat before speaking, patterns so ingrained they felt like extensions of my own breathing. And when he was gone, they remained stubbornly reminding me that someone had lived here, someone whose body no longer occupied the space but whose spirit had embedded itself into the wood and plaster. And I walked through each room feeling that weight, heavy, pressing, like a hand upon my chest that refused to lift, the silence of the house not soothing but suffocating, stretching nights into eternities. And I could feel the memory of him everywhere, in the kitchen where he made coffee, in the living room where his chair always sat, in the bedroom where his presence had once been a constant warmth. And then his son arrived, the boy I hadn't seen in years. Not a boy anymore, though in my mind he was frozen in the memory of polite nods and silent retreats to his room. A stranger in flesh and bone, yet undeniably linked to the man I had loved. And I realized, as he moved quietly through the rooms that night, that grief is a strange force. One that rearranges boundaries without permission, that allows proximity to feel both dangerous and necessary. That makes a glance, a touch, an accidental brush of the arm feel like an event. And I found him wrapped in a blanket in the living room, shoulders hunched, staring at the unlit fireplace as though it could somehow bring back the presence we had lost. And I stood at the doorway, caught between the desire to speak, to comfort, and the instinct to retreat, to honor invisible rules of mourning that no one has ever clearly defined. And I retreated to the kitchen to make tea, believing he would be asleep when I returned. But he wasn't, and when I offered him the cup, our eyes met in a way that startled me. A mixture of unresolved anger, silent questioning, and a depth of grief I couldn't fully articulate. And I sat at the far end of the couch, not speaking, not needing to, because silence itself became a shared language, a heavy mutual acknowledgement of absence and presence simultaneously. And as the days passed, he stayed, not intruding but existing in the house in a way that transformed it, that made it feel less unbearable. His confidence quiet, careful, a presence both familiar and newly revealed. And slowly, I noticed the subtle ways he mirrored his father yet remained distinct, the sharp definition of his face, the depth of his voice, the steadiness of his movements, the way he carried himself like someone who belonged. And mornings became small revelations, waking to find him in the kitchen already moving, leaning against the counter, the aroma of coffee mingling with the faint memory of someone I had loved and lost. And I found myself watching him despite myself, aware of every detail, every movement, and realizing that grief had created cracks in my previous understanding of boundaries, that the years had changed us both, that the ache of loss had opened doors to unexpected connections. And one evening in the low light of the garage, watching him sift through his father's tools, the dust clinging to his hands, shadows emphasizing the line of his arms, I felt something stir within me, not desire at first, but recognition, memory. The strange familiarity of his presence making the air between us charged. And when he smiled at me, a quiet, open smile without flirtation or caution, I felt drawn into a moment I hadn't anticipated, a moment where the past and present collided, where the weight of absence made proximity feel like necessity. And as nights passed, I found myself awake more often than not, restless, wandering into hallways, drawn by the sound of movement, the possibility of connection. And when his door opened and he invited me in, I felt a pull I couldn't resist, the door closing behind me with a quiet finality that sealed us in the same space. Fragile, unspoken, the air thick with something that defied naming, our hands brushing, lingering, until they found each other in a gesture that was careful yet deliberate. And we sat together, the edge of the bed separating and connecting us. And in that closeness, a new reality formed, delicate and planned, a balance between longing and restraint, between memory and present need. And as we lay side by side, the details of grief, of loss, of love long past and yet present collided in a complex tapestry of emotion, a mixture of disbelief, awakening, and an unspoken acknowledgement that human connection, even in the midst of tragedy, persists. That comfort can exist in proximity without intent. That warmth can arise where emptiness once reigned. And over the following hours, we talked quietly, voices low, about childhoods, marriages, absences, priorities shifted by grief. And as sunlight crept through the window, illuminating the contours of his face as he slept, I realized the house was no longer a place of pressure and heaviness, but a space where silence could breathe, where grief could coexist with unexpected tenderness, where the past shadow and presence light intertwined, and I understood perhaps for the first time. That grief does not come alone, it brings with it strange needs and unforeseen connections, moments where proximity and warmth feel like survival, and sometimes in the aftermath of loss the human heart finds its own ways to heal, to reach, to awaken to possibilities that were previously unimagined, reminding us that even in the depth of sorrow, life continues, breathing through spaces we thought were empty, filling them with subtle transformative presence, and that even when boundaries seem fixed by circumstance, they can shift quietly, imperceptibly. Until one day you notice the space beside you, the warmth, the steady presence, and realize that possibility exists, fragile, fleeting, and beautiful, that hearts even fractured can still recognize and respond to other hearts, and that in the midst of everything we lose, there is still a chance to be seen, to be comforted, to be held, not in replacement of what was lost, but as a testament to survival, to continuity, to the unspoken promise that life, grief, and even unexpected desire can coexist in the quietest of ways. And as I watch him sleep, feeling the weight of all that had passed and all that might still come, I understood that the house was finally full, not of echoes of absence alone, but of new delicate life, of human connection forged in the most unlikely circumstances. And in that awareness, I felt a shift inside me. Subtle but profound, a recognition that even when love appears impossible, even when grief seems insurmountable, the human heart persists, quietly, insistently, finding warmth where it can, embracing moments of closeness without shame and breathing finally freely.